With all these brands and different types of fly line, do you get confused when you're trying to select one? In this video, I'm going to explain my personal preference as well as what fly line I use for each situation. What's up everyone, this is Tanaka of Wish4Fish, giving you tips, bringing you on adventures, and taking you on the water. In this video, I'm going to talk about fly line. And as you can see, there's many different kinds of fly lines, and it gets a little bit confusing. Now, the simplest way to put it, for those of you that are just starting out, is that if you have a 5-weight rod, you should select a 5-weight line. That's the simplest way to put things. Now, obviously, you could go into greater detail as far as your situation or what kind of fishery you're fishing. For instance, trout, you're maybe going to select a trout line, or for instance, if you're in the tropics, you're going to select a tropical line. Now, some people like to overline or underline. In other words, overlining would be using a 6-weight line with a 5-weight rod, or underlining would be using a 4-weight line with a 5-weight rod. Now, that selection has to do with how fast your rod is, how slow your rod is, your casting style, and your personal preference. Now, most of the time, I usually just go with the correct weight line with the rod. There have been times where I felt like I needed to go up. I've never felt the need to go down. So my first experience with selecting a fly line was when I had to replace my old one. And the reel that I had came with the fly line, so I didn't select the fly line. And when I went to go buy one, the Rio Gold was like $80. And I had a hard time thinking that was like half the price of my setup, you know, and I was like, why am I gonna spend that much on the line? The store that I went to was TCO at the time, and even they said, they were like, look, there's a big difference between a $40 line and a $100 line, and you'll see a huge difference. Now, there isn't that much difference between an $80 to a $100. There's not much of a jump, but when you're talking about a low-end line versus a high-end line, there is a huge difference. The line is very important because the line is essentially what's loading the rod in your cast. So having the right line could be a completely different experience. And when I put on the Rio Gold on my outfit, it was like casting a brand new setup. It was a completely different experience. I got into streamer fishing, and then you're going into streamer lines, or you're going into salt, and you're going into tropical lines. And there's just so many choices to be made. Even the jump from Rio Gold to Rio In Touch was the first thing that I did. And the second line that I really selected was a streamer tip line. So I went through all these companies, but it's not Rio, Cortland, and now Airflow. There were certain lines that I liked in certain situations. For instance, the trout line, I preferred Rio. For salt, I preferred Cortland. And then I was introduced to Airflow. I was down in the Keys with Dave Tepper, and he cast my setup, and he was like, you know what, you should just give this a go. And I cast his rod, and I tell you, it was really smooth, and I really liked how it cast. And I was like, is it the line or is it your rod? And he was like, I think it's both. And so I literally went on eBay and purchased his rod just to see if it is the rod or if it is the line. And I went and bought some Airflow, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, you know what, maybe I was being naive by not trying all the lines out. So one thing that blew me away is that he told me that he's had that line for 9 years, and I couldn't believe that it was still in that good of shape. Matter of fact, I usually go through line in one season, and to tell you the truth, more than that. And so the fact that he had that for 9 years kind of blew me away. And so I decided to get the Airflow trout. Now, I did select the super dry trout, and I didn't like it. Matter of fact, I was in Idaho fishing the Henry's Fork, and I took it off within 20 minutes. It just didn't cast the same as the Rio Gold or what I was used to. Now, this particular line is the Airflow Super Dry Elite, and the Elite is for a softer action rod, which is why it didn't really fit on what I was using. I was using a faster action rod, so it didn't quite go well with my setup. So that's one thing that I mean about getting the right line for your setup or your personal preference. So I have selected the line company that I'm going to be using for the 2020 season, and in this box I have the lines that I'm going to be using. I'm going to explain where I'm going to be using them and why. All right, so let's just clear some of this stuff out of the way here. Ooh. Oh, as you can see, it's Airflow. Streamer Max Super Flow. So now that I made some room, let's go through the box. Bam! Neat. So after my first experience in the Keys with Airflow and then and the Henry's Fork with this Super Dry Elite, I decided to go with the Super Flow Exceed. Now the Super Flow is Airflow's newest series, and the Exceed is a much more aggressive taper, so it loads the rod a little bit better. So if you're looking for something to load a faster action rod, you might want to go with the Exceed Super Flow. Now the biggest difference between Airflow versus the other line brands out there is that everybody else uses PVC and Airflow uses polyurethane. And the biggest difference between polyurethane and PVC is polyurethane lasts longer, it's just more durable, which obviously for a fly line is very important. It doesn't have as much memory as PVC does, and you can bond more tungsten to poly. So basically that means that, for instance, sinking lines or streamer tip lines or anything that has a sink rate to it will be a faster sink rate because of the fact that they can bond more tungsten in it, which means the diameter of the line will be smaller. With the diameter being smaller, there's less resistance in the water, so it's going to sink much faster. This is very important for any of you that are going to a tropical location or anywhere where you're going to be using bug spray that has DEET in it. When they make poly, they use heat, but when they use PVC, they use solvent, and DEET basically is corrosive to that solvent, so it basically just eats your line away. So be very careful if you're using DEET with PVC. Always wash your lines very thoroughly. So before I made the full commitment, I did try Airflow in Louisiana, which was my last video that I made, and I did try out the Bonefish Redfish line, and it was fantastic. It cast really well, and I also tried the Permit Tarpon, which was a 10 weight, and I just casted that. I didn't use it in Louisiana. I was mostly using the 8 weight. So any trout situation where I'm going to be using my 5 weight, I'm going to be using this floating line, the Super Flow 5 weight Exceed. Anything involving streamers where I'm going to be using my 6 weight up to my 8 weight with streamers, I'm going to be using the Streamer Max Short as well as the Streamer Max Long. This has a sinking tip, an 18-foot sinking tip. Now, I'm going to be using these in Iceland, especially the 8 weight line. Now, as far as tropical is concerned, I'm going to be going to Cuba and 2 destinations in Brazil with untamed angling, so I'm going to need a tropical line, and I'm going with the Super Dry Tropical as well as the Tropical Punch. And I'm going to be using everything from 8 weight, 9 weight, 10 weight, and probably 12 weight with the tropical line. Now, I'm also going to be doing the switch over to Airflow Tippet and leaders, so I'm going to be using those as well. I'm going to be using these throughout the season in a variety of situations, so keep up with the videos to see what I do and do not like about them and what I suggest for you. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like, share, or comment below. Let me know what lines you prefer, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you're on social media, give us a follow at Wish4Fish, and I'll see you on the water.